Chosen ones, this instruction is clear. Hold your tongue. This is not the time to talk. In the 43rd cycle of the Silent Concord, the mountain city of Veilhold woke to a sky the color of old bruises. No birds sang. No wind moved the prayer banners that hung like exhausted ghosts from every tower. Even the river, which had never in 1,000 years been quiet, had gone mute, holding its breath between black stones. They had been waiting for this day since the first child born under the blood star had opened her eyes and refused to cry. 7 were chosen, not by prophecy carved in stone, not by the trembling hands of aging oracles, not even by the desperate mathematics of the star readers. They were chosen the way lightning chooses a tree, suddenly, irrevocably, and without explanation. Their names were already being erased from the city rolls. Their mothers had already burned their childhood clothes. Their lovers had already turned their faces to the wall and wept without sound. Because the instruction was older than grief itself. When the silence descends, the chosen must hold their tongue. This is not the time to talk. They gathered dusk in the Obsidian Basilica, the only place in Veilhold where echoes were forbidden by sacred geometry. 7 black chairs waited in a perfect heptagon. 7 silver masks lay on the seats, featureless, mouthless, eyeless. Once worn, the masks would seal more than flesh. Caliph was the first to arrive. She had been a singer whose voice once cracked marble. Now she carried her own tongue between her teeth, like a prisoner she refused to execute. Next came Torin, the boy who had laughed in the face of death so many times that death eventually sent him a polite letter of resignation. His laughter had died 3 days ago when the first star fell silent. Then Lyrian, who spoke 7 languages and had invented 3 more. Her fingers still twitched with unwritten poems. Sarov, the blacksmith, whose hammer had rung louder than any bell. Ismera, the healer, who had never learned how to lie, even to save lives. Dren, the thief, who once stole the shadow of the High Warden and sold it back to him for a single copper coin. And finally, little Vera, only 12 winters old, who had never spoken a word in her life anyway. They did not greet each other. Greetings require sound. One by one they sat. One by one they lifted the silver masks. One by one they pressed cold metal to warm skin. The masks did not merely cover, they drank. Inside the metal, something ancient and patient uncoiled. It tasted fear, tasted love, tasted every unsaid apology and every swallowed curse. Then it sealed the lips with a surgeon's precision and a lover's cruelty. When the last mask clicked into place, the silence became physical. It pressed against the skin like wet velvet. It crawled into ears like slow mercury. It wrapped around hearts and squeezed until every beat sounded like an apology. And then the voice came. Not from outside, not from above, not even from the mountain itself. It came from the exact center of each chosen's chest, as though their own ribs had grown mouths. You have been silent for 3 heartbeats of the world. Now you will be silent for the rest. No one flinched, no one could. The fracture is coming, not tomorrow, not in 1,000 years. It is coming in the space between one breath and the next, and when it arrives, everything that has ever made sound will tear open. Every scream ever swallowed, every lullaby ever whispered, every vow, every betrayal, every lie told in the dark, they will all speak at once, and the world will shatter from the noise. The voice paused, as though letting the weight settle into marrow. You 7 are the mute dam. You are the sealed vault. You are the last thin skin between the world and its own unbearable memory. If even one of you speaks, if even one word escapes before the fracture passes, the silence will break and everything will drown in what it has refused to forget. 7 pairs of masked eyes stared at nothing. You will walk into the fracture. You will stand at its heart.
You will not move, you will not blink more than necessary, and you will not speak, not one syllable, not one sigh, not one prayer. A long, terrible stillness followed. Then the voice asked the only question it would ever ask them. Do you understand? 7 heads nodded once. The masks drank the motion like wine. Somewhere far below, in the roots of the mountain, something older than gods began to wake. Cracks appeared in places that had no business cracking. Colors bled where colors should never bleed. Time stuttered like a heart skipping beats. And the 7 chosen ones rose together, without sound, without farewell. They walked out of the basilica into a city that no longer recognized them. Mothers looked through them, children hid behind doors, lovers pressed palms to mouths to keep from crying out. The streets parted before them like water before the prow of a ghost ship. At the edge of the city, where the last lantern lights surrendered to the fracture's hungry dark, they stopped. One last time, each of them felt the ghost of their own voice rise in their throat, desperate, furious, loving, terrified. And one last time, each of them swallowed it. Then they stepped forward into the place where sound itself was being murdered. Behind them, Veilhold held its breath. Ahead of them, the fracture waited, vast, screaming, and utterly silent. And the 7 walked into it, mouths sealed, hearts steady, carrying the weight of every unsaid thing the world had ever tried to forget. Because sometimes salvation is not a song. Sometimes salvation is the terrible courage to hold your tongue when everything inside you is begging to scream. And so they did. They held, they held, they held, until the fracture finally passed, and the world, shaken, bleeding, but still whole, dared to breathe again. Somewhere in the afterward, a child in Veilhold would ask many years later, why do they say the stars are quieter now? And an old woman who had once been a mother to one of the 7 would smile sadly and whisper, because someone loved us enough to stay silent when it mattered most. And the child would look up at the sky and wonder at the beautiful, fragile hush that still lingered between the stars. And somewhere, deep inside the fracture's healed scar, 7 silver masks lie buried under centuries of new silence, still waiting, still listening, still holding their tongues. For the next time, the world forgets how to be quiet.
In the shadowed annals of Veilhold's history, etched not in ink but in the faint tremors of silenced earthquakes, the 43rd cycle of the Silent Concord dawned like a thief in the night. The mountain city, perched precariously on the spine of the elder peaks, had always been a bastion against the world's cacophony. Its walls were hewn from obsidian that absorbed sound like a sponge drinks water, and its people spoke in whispers lest they awaken the ancient curses buried in the earth. But on this day, the sky hung heavy, bruised purple and indigo, as if the heavens themselves had been beaten into submission. No birds pierced the air with song, their wings beat silently against an invisible barrier. The prayer banners, once fluttering with the soft sighs of wind, dangled limp and lifeless from the iron towers. Even the river Voss, which had thundered through the valleys for millennia, carving canyons with its relentless roar, now slithered like a serpent in stealth, its waters muted to a glassy hush between jagged black stones. The people of Veilhold knew this silence was no mere omen, it was the harbinger of the fracture. Legends whispered in the dim glow of hearth fires told of it, a rift in the fabric of reality where every sound ever uttered, every echo ever born, converged into a maelstrom of auditory Armageddon. It had come before, in cycles measured not by calendars but by the dimming of stars. And each time, the city had survived only because of the chosen ones, those fated to bear the weight of the world's unspoken burdens. They had been waiting for this day since the first child born under the blood star had opened her eyes and refused to cry. That child, now a woman of fierce resolve, was among them. But the selection of the chosen was no grand ceremony, no lottery of fate drawn from golden urns. It struck like lightning chooses a solitary tree in a storm, sudden, merciless, and without appeal. One moment you were ordinary, a baker kneading dough, a scholar poring over scrolls. The next, a mark bloomed on your palm, a spiral of silver that burned cold as frostbite. And with it came the instruction, older than the mountains themselves, inscribed in the very marrow of Veilhold's soul. Chosen ones, this instruction is clear. Hold your tongue. This is not the time to talk. By twilight, their names were already being scrubbed from the city's ledgers as if they had never existed. Mothers with tears carving silent paths down their cheeks gathered the remnants of their children's lives, faded tunics, wooden toys, half-finished letters, and consigned them to purifying flames. Lovers turned away, pressing fists to mouths to stifle sobs, for to voice grief was to invite the fracture's premature fury. Families gathered in circles, holding hands in wordless vigils, their eyes speaking volumes that their lips dared not. The seven chosen converged on the obsidian basilica as the sun bled its last light into the horizon. This sanctum, buried deep in the heart of the city, was a marvel of forbidden architecture. Its walls curved in impossible angles, designed by long-dead geomancers to devour echoes before they could form. No footfall resounded here, no breath whispered betrayal. In the center stood 7 thrones of polished black stone, arranged in a flawless heptagon, symbolizing the 7 silences of birth, of love, of betrayal, of war, of peace, of death, and of rebirth. Upon each throne rested a silver mask, featureless voids where faces should be, forged from metal harvested from fallen stars. These were no mere disguises, they were prisons for the voice, seals against the soul's most dangerous impulse. Kaleith arrived first, her steps deliberate as a funeral march. Once, her voice was the city's greatest treasure, a soprano that could shatter marble statues and mend broken hearts in equal measure. Ballads sung in her honor spoke of how she had once calmed a raging storm with a single aria. But now, as the mark on her palm pulsed like a second heartbeat, she carried her tongue like a loaded weapon, clenched between teeth that ached from restraint. She had sung her last note 3 nights prior, a lullaby to her infant niece, and the memory of it burned in her throat like swallowed embers. Torin followed, the young jester whose laughter had been a balm against Veilhold's perpetual gloom. He had mocked death itself, dodging assassins' blades and cliffside falls with quips that left crowds in stitches. Death, it was said, had grown so weary of his defiance that it sent him a scroll sealed with black wax. I yield, live as you will. But the mark had stolen his mirth. His face, usually creased with perpetual grins, was now a mask of stone, his eyes haunted by the ghosts of unsaid jokes. Lyrian slipped in next, her scholarly robes whispering against the floor, despite the basilica's acoustics. A polyglot who had mastered 7 tongues and birthed 3 more from the ether of her mind, she had woven words into tapestries of knowledge. Her fingers, stained with ink, still twitched with the phantom itch to scribe poems of defiance. But the instruction bound her. She had burned her lexicons at dawn, watching the flames consume possibilities.
Sarav, the blacksmith, lumbered in, his massive frame casting long shadows. His hammer had forged the city's defenses, its clangor a rhythm that synced with Veilhold's pulse. Weapons born from his anvil had turned back invading hordes, and his bellows had drowned out the cries of the wounded. Now his calloused hands trembled, empty of purpose, as he contemplated a world without the symphony of steel. Ysmera, the healer, entered with the grace of one who had danced with life and death. Her words had been elixirs, truths that mended flesh and spirit. She had never lied, not even to ease a dying man's pain, believing honesty was the truest medicine. But silence was her new oath, and it weighed heavier than any scalpel. Dren, the shadow thief, materialized from the dim corners like smoke. He had pilfered the intangible, secrets, shadows, even the High Warden's own silhouette, which he ransomed back for a pittance. His wit was as sharp as his daggers, but now his lips were sealed, his clever tongue imprisoned. Last came little Vera, barely 12 winters, her wide eyes reflecting the basilica's gloom. Born mute, she had never uttered a sound, communicating through gestures and drawings that spoke louder than words. The mark on her palm seemed almost redundant, yet she bore it with a solemnity that shamed the adults. In her silence, she was already a veteran. They seated themselves without ceremony, the air thickening with unspoken farewells. One by one, they donned the masks. The silver clung like living skin, tendrils of cold metal weaving into flesh, sipping at memories of speech. It tasted their fears, Calith's dread of voiceless eternity, Tauren's terror of humorless voids. It savored their loves, Lyrian's passion for lost languages, Sarav's devotion to his forge-born family. And it sealed them, not with locks, but with an ancient alchemy that turned will into wall. As the final mask latched with an unaudible click, the silence descended fully, a tangible force, wrapping around them like fog laced with lead. It invaded ears, coiled in lungs, pressed against eyelids until vision blurred with unshed tears. Hearts beat in muffled apology, each thump a reminder of fragility. Then, from the core of each chosen's being, the voice erupted, not as sound, but as vibration in bone and blood. It was the mountain's voice, or perhaps the world's, ancient and impartial. You have endured 3 heartbeats of the world's silence. Now you shall bear the rest. The words resonated in their chests, a chorus of one. The fracture approaches, not in distant tomorrows, nor in the span of lifetimes. It surges in the breath between breaths, a cataclysm where every sound ever birthed or buried erupts at once. Screams stifled in cradles, vows shattered in bedrooms, lies whispered in councils, battles' roars, lovers' sighs, all will clamor at once. The world will fracture from its own cacophony, splintering into echoes eternal. A pause, heavy as granite. You are the dam against this deluge, the vault locking away the unspeakable, the fragile membrane between existence and oblivion. Should one of you falter, a word, a whisper, a whimper, the seal shatters, and all drowns in remembered noise. 7 masked figures sat immobile, their breaths synchronized in defiance. You must enter the fracture's maw, stand unyielding at its epicenter. Move not, blink not beyond necessity. Breathe only to endure, and speak not plea, not curse, not farewell. The voice lingered, then posed its singular query. Do you comprehend? 7 nods, deliberate and final. The masks absorbed the gestures, feeding on resolve. Beneath the basilica, in the mountain's labyrinthine veins, stirrings began. Fissures yawned in bedrock, exhaling scents of ozone and forgotten dust. Colors warped, blues bleeding into unheard screams, reds pulsing like silenced alarms. Time hiccuped, moments stretching and snapping like overtaut strings. The chosen arose as one, masks gleaming under faint torchlight. They exited the basilica into a veil-hold transformed. Streets, once alive with subdued murmurs, now gaped empty. Citizens peered from shuttered windows, eyes wide with awe and pity. Mothers clutched children, lovers embraced in mute agony. The city parted for them, a sea of silence yielding to prophets of quiet. At the precipice where lantern light surrendered to the fracture's void, a swirling abyss of inverted sound, they halted. The fracture loomed, a vortex where air screamed without noise, where shadows howled in visual echoes. One final surge of rebellion rose in each throat, Calith's aria of protest, Tauren's defiant chuckle, Lyrian's eloquent curse, Serav's thunderous oath, Ysmera's truthful plea, Dren's sly whisper, Vera's imagined cry. They swallowed them all. Stepping forward, they plunged into the maelstrom. The fracture enveloped them, a tempest of phantom noises, ghostly battles clashing, lovers' moans intertwining with war cries, children's laughter fracturing into sobs. It clawed at their masks, tempted with visions of release. Calith singing storms to calm, Tauren laughing away despair. But they held, anchors in chaos. Days blurred into eternities, bodies weakened, minds frayed, yet silence prevailed. Vera's unyielding quiet became their beacon, her unyielding quiet a lesson in endurance. Finally, the fracture waned, its fury spent against their resolution. The rift sealed, leaving scars in sky and soul. Veilhold exhaled. Birds tested tentative songs. The river murmured apologies. Stars twinkled with subdued light. Years later, a child queried an elder, "Why are the stars quieter now?" The old woman, once Calith's mother, replied softly, "Because 7 souls loved enough to silence themselves, saving us from our own voices." Deep in the healed fracture, 7 masks lie entombed, vigilant sentinels, waiting. For the world, ever noisy, will forget again, and the cycle will demand new chosen to hold their tongues.